Hi again, everybody, and welcome to a new edition of Newsmakers TV. I'm Jerry Roberts. It is Thursday, July 10th, 2025, day 172 of the Trump regime, which means only 1,216 days until the next presidential election. And on that cheery note, I'm delighted to welcome to the program for the first time Christina McDermott, staff writer for the Santa Barbara Independent. And we are joined by the angry poodle his own self, my friend and colleague Nick Welsh, executive editor of the Indy. Thanks, both of you, for coming. Christina is the paper's current Mickey Flax Fellow, brought on board specifically to cover housing in Santa Barbara. And we might as well jump right into the hottest issue on the beat right now. Christina, I'm seated here in front of the mission, sort of. Um, but I'm hard pressed to think of any project that might be a bigger desecration of Santa Barbara's iconography than building an 8-story apartment building next to the mission. Maybe a shopping mall on the courthouse lawn. But here we are, perilously close to doing it. You've been reporting the hell out of this story, 505 Los Olivos. What's the latest?
So I guess I was maybe a little slow on the uptake, but most recently came to my attention that the owners have sued the county, not the city, this is city property, regarding their property taxes, alleging that they don't have to pay them.
Which they
Uh,
haven't, right? Which was
for 2 years, they have not. They owe about $198,000. Um, they're alleging that because they lease to a church, they shouldn't have to pay property taxes. But if you kind of look into who owns the church, they have links, if not actually are, but I can't prove that they are, but they have clear links to the owners themselves. And the county has basically fought back and said that no, the property's vacant and you were late filing your paperwork anyways. So who knows what's really going to happen with that.
And what is the
what
name of the
what's the
church?
name of the church?
It's the named the I always mix it up.
Universalist.
Unitarian Universalist Mission. It doesn't have any connection to the Unitarians in Santa Barbara. They were like, we don't know who these people are, and we have no connection to them. Doesn't have a website, doesn't seem to have any public information about worship at all. So to that extent, it seems like a bit of a shell of a church.
Nick,
But
you were, I believe, a minister of the Universalist Unitarian
Yeah,
Fellowship.
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. This
You
is one
guys,
of the churches that you can like go online and become a minister and ordain people. You know,
yeah. So
I mean,
you
it
did a
sounds like, but
hippie wedding, I think, at one point.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But Christina, seriously, I mean, this is just sort of the latest twist in who these people actually are, because the developers themselves are a bit of a mystery, to put it kindly. Talk about who wants to build this thing. It's obviously not anybody from Santa Barbara.
So the owners have been pretty clear in not revealing who they are, at least to me. They go under this LLC called the Mission LLC, which really just links to another LLC. It's another thing that has like no website, nothing really about it. And then if you're looking at who owns that LLC, it's another LLC called SoCal Holdings, and their address is somewhere in New Mexico, which looks like it's sort of like an address that allows LLCs to just stick their name on it. So it's kind of hard to know exactly who owns this building through that method. They also have redacted their information from their property taxes online, so you can't look at their tax data and know who they are. They manager on the preliminary applications, projects have preliminary applications sometimes, is Ben Eilenberg, who is also working with Craig and Stephanie Smith on the Grand Ave project and has connections to this couple, Craig and Stephanie Smith, for several years. So the Craig and Stephanie Smith are also the CFO and or CEO and CFO of this church, the Universalist Unitarian Mission. So it does seem like these people have connections to this property.
And Nick,
But
remind me, didn't Ryan do a piece last year or the year before about this couple, and they take like fat from plastic surgery to
But yeah,
power the
so
universe or something? What?
Craig Smith had a plastic surgery operation,
Yeah.
and he would drain the fat from people via liposuction, and then create a fuel, an alternative fuel for cars. So he would burn people's fat uh, and make that go, which you have to admit is ingenious in its complete Carl Hyacin sleazeball way. His wife was involved in a large canvas warehouse that she got in trouble with down in LA. And they're both highly inventive people, but I just think the extent to which they have gone to erase their tracks uh, really calls everything about them into question.
Yeah, I think highly inventive is doing a lot of work in that sentence there, Nick. But I mean, seriously, I mean, it's all funny and goofy and mysterious and weird. And, in normal times we might be laughing about it, but the combination of all of the state legislation, basically doing away with local control, which has led to this, so-called builder's remedy thing, along with the repeal of CEQA, the California Environmental Quality Act, for a lot of housing projects. Those two things have made this seem perilously close to happening. Can you sort of take those in order, Christina, and just kind of unpack what they mean for this project?
Yeah, so it is a builder's remedy project, and builder's remedy's actually been around since 1990, but it really doesn't seem to show up much until the 2020s. Um, and it means that zoning essentially does not matter. You can build what you want unless there's a deliberate or there's an unmitigable, that's a fancy word, but unavoidable threat to public health or safety. Then you cannot build the project. But like ruining a character or a view or something like that, that's not really part of builder's remedy. Um, so builder's remedy projects are allowed to go through if the city or county or whatever sort of township is out of compliance with the state when it comes to a housing plan or the housing element. And so there was a window of time,
A
I thought
brief window of time.
brief, in a couple of years, that Santa Barbara was out of compliance. So that's
Well,
when this,
I'm old, so a couple of years is a brief.
yeah, that's when this project crops up. And then the CEQA stuff is newer, the exemptions. I am not certain, but I think because there are historic buildings on this property, I'm not sure the CEQA exemptions apply to this property. That is my understanding at the time, although I'm not totally certain. Generally, the CEQA exemptions would basically allow certain projects to sort of fast track if they're infill, meaning if they're urban, and avoid CEQA. But there's specific rules for builder's remedy. It gets really complicated. And I think this project, because it has buildings on the historic register, it doesn't hit all those rules that it needs to for the exemption.
And just to follow up there, I've spoken with city administrator and some council members, and they feel confident, at least at this point, that CEQA, which is the California Environmental Quality Act, which says you have to have an EIR, would apply, notwithstanding what the governor just passed in Sacramento. And so there is, as to say, right now, I am told that the uh, attorney for the developer, who you referred to, called up the city and said, "Hey, guess what? CEQA's over. We don't have to worry about it." And the city said, "Not so fast." I know that the city is going to insist on it, and I'm sure that that will be litigated. Um, I mean, that is clear. I mean, the city is taking pains not to tip its hand or say anything that would say that they have prejudged the project. But I think, I have never seen any other project, any other issue unify the whole community like this one has. I mean, e-bikes not even close. And there is like 1,000. I have not met anybody, nor have I met anybody who's met anybody who actually likes the idea of it. Everybody is sort of appalled and outraged, and what is the city going to do, and what can we do? And so one of the things I'm hearing about, and I'm sure everybody's been hearing about it, but there's sort of murmurings of talk about, okay, let's buy these guys out before the train really gets out of the station. So before they have a development partner, let's find a number that works, that would, give them a rate of return that would be beyond what they could hope to get if and when they went through the EIR process and had a partner. So I know that's being talked about. I don't know that it exists yet.
Yeah. And so where are we, Christina, in terms of the process? Because they have submitted, I think, a series of plans. They've been sent back for more work. Now they've sued the city. So where, kind of just level set us, if you would, about where we are.
So they submitted, yes, several iterations of plans, which the city would come back and be like, hey, you're missing information we need. Their plans they have a full application now, so their application got approved as complete on July 7th. No, July 3rd. 7th was the deadline. So it's now a complete application. It now goes into something called like a consistency analysis, which is, from what I can understand, more sort of the city has to do it, where it tells the developers everything that is out of compliance with the city's objective standards, including zoning. But because it's builder's remedy, it doesn't have to be concerned about zoning. And then it will go to CEQA analysis. So it's kind of like boom, boom, boom. And a lot of the questions being raised about like, hey, how will this impact evacuations? How will this impact like archaeology? That is the type of stuff that gets answered in CEQA.
In CEQA.
And
Okay.
so
Yes.
one of the key things in CEQA that could be make it a big wrinkle is that they say, okay, here's the project now, 8 stories, and what are the alternatives? And
Yes.
so you have to step it down. So what would be, could it be 200 units? Could be so anything at this point, I think would be more than the community is going to want to put up with.
Yeah.
But
Especially because it's a builder's remedy project, it can only grow or shrink by 20%.
so they're kind of
So they're
boxed
kind of
in.
stuck.
Yeah, our friend Lanny Ebenstein, he copied me on a letter. I'm imagine you saw it too,
They
to the
need to
mayor and
vote.
to council, saying that any project here would require a vote of the people because of its presence in the historic park, the Santa Barbara Historic Park. Is that a reasonable position, that way of stopping this?
I think it's a reasonable speculation at this point, but you have to remember that a analogous argument was made about the big development project for the Shumba Plaza, which goes way above the city's height limits. Now, the city's height limit was set by a vote of the people back in the early 70s. And so the argument was made that because the people voted for it, they would have to vote to approve this. The city went to its attorneys and they brought in outside experts, and they said, given the changes in state law, no, that is not true. And that the fact that that was a ballot initiative passed by the city had no weight against the state rules and regulations that had subsequently been passed. So I think while Lanny's argument sounds plausible, it's worth pursuing, but I wouldn't bet the farm on it yet, based on what happened out at Lacumba.
And it's also for builder's remedy kind of difficult because what I'm learning is there's not a lot of legal precedent. So you have, you know, the city making sure they're not going to get sued. Well, they've already been sued, but like making sure they're really trying to follow every step because there's no court opinions yet to my knowledge, ruling on things about like builder's remedy and charters and CEQA and stuff. There's only a few cases that have really made it through the courts to trial court. And for the people I've talked to, nothing from the Court of Appeals. So we're sort of like, I don't want to say flying blind, but we don't have as much information about, this 35-year-old law as you thought we might.
Right, because as you point out, it was never really seriously applied, until Scott Wiener, the bane of our existence, decided to do away with local control.
Big key point is going to be fire evacuation.
Yeah,
And that is a notoriously congested and constipated bottleneck right there. And if all of a sudden you have 8 stories of tenants trying to flee in the middle of a fire, uh, that is a serious health and safety consideration. And those are called out in even the new state housing laws as having merit and weight, and they have to be reckoned with.
all right. So just to sort of figure out where we are, I mean, so the city at this point is going completely by the book, being careful not to do anything that could be perceived as
So
like.
your friend, the mayor, has apparently said things on your show about the project that people are wishing he didn't say.
Well,
They
that's
seem
why we love the mayor. We and who's always welcome on
they're
Newsmaker.
like going, Randy,
That's all right. Laura got in trouble on the Sable story too for the same for coming on the show. So nobody's going to come on the show pretty soon. I mean, if Josh doesn't show up, I mean, let's face it, I'm going to be talking to myself even more than I already am. All right. So more work for lawyers, for sure.
Oh, that's you.
And nothing, sort of short term that people need to be in a panic about. The process will unfold as the process unfolds. But as Nick points out, there's just such unanimity against this thing that it's hopefully in the long term it doesn't go ahead.
I mean, really, when have you seen any issue ever that has so unified and outraged and galvanized the community?
Clubbing the pup seals. I think,
Okay.
I think we were almost 95% against that. There was a few people over at SB Current who were
Oh, okay. Free market here. Let the market decide.
yeah. Well, yeah, Christina, you covered that seal story up there in Dillingham, Alaska. I want to get to that in a minute, but you also have another housing story, which is a cover this week, which everybody should go pick up a copy of or read online at independent.com, about the Battistone apartments and some longtime elderly tenants, in other words, our core audience, who are in danger of losing their homes. What is the Battistone Apartments, and what's going on there right now?
Yeah. So Jean Yamamura and I did the story, so she gets the credit for a lot of the hard number work, and I got to talk to a lot of the residents. But the Battistone Foundation, which is owned by the Battistone family, which is the man who started it, started Sambo's, which is now Chad's. So that family has provided low-income senior housing in downtown for, I want to say, since the 60s or 70s,
Yeah, they
decades.
yeah.
And the family is looking to sell their properties and kind of switch over to some sort of grant providing system. But it does mean selling the physical apartments where these people live. And there's been a lot of questions of what that looks like. I think most recently, the foundation has announced that they are going to do a private auction, with a sort of emphasis, I believe was the word used, or focus on people who would, or bidders who would keep it affordable. Um, I don't know anything beyond who's invited, when this auction is happening, but this has really kind of played out over the past 7 months and 6, 7 months. And for people living there, it's a really big uncertainty to live with of like, who is going to buy this? How much would my rent go up? What would I do if I couldn't afford to stay here? Where would I go? You know, people will have to be 63 and older to live there. A lot of people are in their 80s and 90s.
And to
Um,
put it in the context, we're talking 200 units
yeah.
of
So
rental
it's a
housing.
lot.
So it is the biggest single bite of affordable senior housing that could conceivably evaporate. And initially, it wasn't clear whether or not it was going to go to like a nonprofit. That is sort of a more recent
Yeah.
development in the story. And initially, the listing price was something in the neighborhood of 80 million bucks.
Yeah.
And so the
Where is
house,
it? Where is it located?
It's right by Public Market downtown is one set of them, and then there's one on De La Vina.
it's called Edgerly Arms. That's the first one that
Yeah.
Christina was talking about. I've had, you know, parents of friends of mine have lived there, or people I've known over the years have lived there. And it's very, I mean, what you're struck by is a sense of community.
Yeah.
It's,
Well, you
and
really get that from Christina's profiles
yeah,
of the tenants this week.
One thing that struck me too, especially as someone who is in their 20s, is, its location. So, like, yes, it's affordable housing for people, which is very important, but also, like, a lot of people have been able to give up driving, give up car pavements, and able to walk to what they need, walk to Ralph's, walk to like their workout class. And that keeps a lot of them independent into their 80s and 90s. It keeps them active and builds, I think, community with them. And so, it is the ability to afford to live there, and it's the community itself that had this uncertainty over it.
Yeah, and it's such an unusual situation. I mean, you have these very civic-minded people who put this in motion to provide housing for old people. It's been going on for decades.
yeah.
Now what? We're into the third or fourth generation where they decided we're going to sell the whole. This has happened to several newspapers I used to work for. But I mean, is that's basically what's going on?
But one of the frustrations Jean has expressed, Jean Amamura, is, when she has tried to speak with the Battistones directly, she gets John Davies, who is a political consultant a lot of people in town are familiar with, who is sort of the massager of the message. And John Davies is very good at telling Jean what she got wrong after she's written it, but not so good at really filling in a lot of the blanks. And so we are told that the latest Cindy Battistone Hill, I believe is her last name, uh, the management obligations of running this, are significant. And at a certain point in your life, you don't want to do it anymore. And you want to pass it off. So initially when this thing was on the market, they were listing it at 80 million bucks. And the Santa Barbara Housing Authority took a look at that, and they just said, if those are the numbers, there's just no way we can buy it and make this work. There's no way it can be massaged with all the magic that we have. So the auction might be a way to bring that number down. It's not clear. And the problem that Zane and Christina have found is that there's a lot of questions without really clear answers. And if you're a tenant living there, you really kind of have a sense of urgency. I need to know, I can't be loosey-goosey here. Is this $1,000 a month stipend for a year, for 2 years, for the rest of my life till I die? It's not clear.
Yeah, and your piece with Gene, you and Gene make clear. I mean, the rents are what, like $1,200 or something. I mean, it's way below market for
Yeah.
Yeah, it
so
had it's depending on when you got there, and then it only goes up a very small percentage. And so I spoke to someone who's paying, I think, 700 a month for their one bedroom. I spoke to people who got there more recently up to 1,600 a month, but it's still well below market rate, especially for somewhere so near downtown in like a really beautiful part of, well, most of Santa Barbara is beautiful, but it's like a great location.
I
And
mean,
this,
go ahead.
well, and the mechanism of the auction is that's unusual too, no? I mean, wouldn't they just normally put it up to the highest, whoever wanted to pay the most?
Yeah, that's really is a new development. So still a lot of questions for us journalists. I think that information came out a little over a week ago that that's what they were planning to do. They're a family, so like they are a private company. So I don't really know the mechanisms between like what they can do, but it is going to be a private auction according to them.
And do you feel, Christina, and I know John Davies is not perhaps the most candid person on there. I mean, do you get the sense that the family is operating in good faith here? In other words, that aligned with the original mission of the project, which was to keep old people in their homes in Santa Barbara?
So I really only spoke to the tenants. I had the fun job for this cover story, and I got to talk to the people living there. So I only know what they have told me. But what all of them had said was that this was one of the best places they had lived. They felt the management respected them. They felt that the Battistone family had respected them in the past. And so I think in that sense, in a lot of their minds, there's a good argument that the family is operating in good faith. But I mean, Gene took the harder, in my opinion, job in this story, doing the actual numbers and talking to the foundation and stuff like that. But
Yeah.
like to the tenants' own words, like have felt very well taken care of.
Okay. All right. Well, lots to watch on the housing beat. Nick, let me ask you about your Poodle this week, your column filled with outrage over the latest goings on in Washington, and I sensed your frustration somewhat about trying trying to rein it all in. How do you cover all of the outrages in a sufficient way and with a sufficient passion? I mean, it's like whack-a-mole. It just keeps popping up, but. You talked about homelessness and Medicaid, particularly there. What's the local outlook about the? I refuse to call it the big, you know what, bill. And Salute keeps doing
I
it.
came up with a,
Why buy his marketing? I don't get it.
well, I've come up instead of the BBB, I'm the BBBB bill, which is a big bunker buster budget bill or whatever. Um, you know, they're looking at cutting 880 billion from Medicaid nationwide. In Santa Barbara, we have, uh, I think 220,000 people. Uh, or maybe no, it's in Santa Barbara and San Luis. So there are 220,000 people who are covered by Medi-Cal, which is the state version of Medicaid. And they aren't saying we're going to, you know, cut here or here. What they're saying instead is we're going to change the rules of eligibility. So you have to be working, and it's not just that you have to be working, but you have to show you have to re-up like every 6 months. Right now, you don't have to do that, and so if you have to resubmit your paperwork every 6 months and get it approved. Imagine all of a sudden a whole bunch of people had to kind of navigate a new app or navigating new passwords or providing the paperwork. This approach has been tried before in Arkansas, for example, and the state of Arkansas did exactly the same thing. And what they found is uh, a whole lot of people, thousands and thousands and thousands of people, just fell off the rolls because they weren't up to the paperwork task of staying current. And it's not like, Social Security checks that come every month. The only time you get the money is when you go to the hospital and you get treatment. So now all of a sudden, when you go to the hospital and they say, what insurance do you have? Maybe you don't have any. And if the Arkansas numbers, are borne out nationally, we're going to have a whole lot of people who no longer qualify or they've jumped off the cliff. And
Yeah.
so here, like Cottage Hospital, I called up Cottage, and it turns out 21% of their patient load last year was covered by Medi-Cal. 21%. That's like 67,000, 68,000 hospital visits. How many of those can be written off as waste, fraud, or abuse? And so if Cottage doesn't have that, what happens? Do they eat it, or do those people go to the emergency room? Um,
And so, and you wrote about the Lompoc situation. What's
the
that?
Lompoc situation is even a bit more complicated because it is categorized as a rural hospital, and there's some trickier financing rules and regulations that I'm saying I won't get into those. But um, initially, the CEO of that hospital, Yvette Cope, was saying, we're going to lose 21 million, which is 13% of their total budget if this goes through. Now, in order to get the bill passed, they found 50 billion with a B to cover uh, rural hospitals, but that's nationwide. What I've been told by Yvette Cope is that California is going to get probably the smallest chunk of that 50 billion for reasons I don't understand. And so how that will trickle down to Lompoc, uh, we don't know, but it doesn't seem like it's going to cover the 21 billion that was going to get decapitated.
And would this have any effect on Sansom, which of course has had its own financial problems and was sold as a result of it?
That's 9% of their patient volume is covered by Medi-Cal. And so what Sansom told me is, okay, we can either eat it, and by eating it, we provide the service without getting paid, which at a certain point that, they're obligated to do so, or uh, people again show up in the emergency rooms.
Wow. And then the waste, fraud, and abuse argument is it's just like, who would go through the trouble of being on Medicaid who didn't need it? I mean, you know what I mean? It's just like, oh,
You
I'm gonna go get some fake health care. It's just the
know,
whole.
a lot of people, I talked to Maria Owen, who is the head of SANCAL, which is the administrating agency for uh, Medi-Cal in San Luis and Santa Barbara County. And she said, uh, she said, first of all, this idea of we're going to get able-bodied people working, she said, we looked at our numbers and we found that 90% of our beneficiaries are working. So it's like this misnomer, like, oh my God, lazy people aren't working. They're, able-bodied guys are watching TV. 90% are working. She said, we looked at the numbers. The number one category were people who were clerks, retail clerks, and they work for small shops who are not required, because of their size, to provide insurance. So these are people who are the working poor, who this is their only avenue of being able to get insurance that they should possibly afford. And so, again, the whole problem, and you're right, I mean, it is impossible to get your arms around, all that is going on. I mean, Trump is a genius at flooding the zone. And this bill, I mean, think about it. How long has Santa Barbara been talking about what are we going to do with State Street? 5 years, something like that? Okay, that is small. Now, maybe that's a little extreme. We've spent too much time. But here is the unified field area of every government operation you can imagine. And they've just put it in one bill. It is inconceivable that anybody could do justice to the complexity of the operation.
Hi,
Repeat it. Repeat it.
you're at a meeting?
Yeah. Marianne, repeat it if you would, okay?
We
Hi,
need
Marianne.
Sorry. Hi, Jerry. Oh, gosh.
Yeah.
I don't know if you can see me.
Hey,
I'm
no,
waiting.
come in, say hello. Did I
Um,
make you late for your meeting?
yes. Um, uh,
Yeah, the complexity you were saying. Yeah, and part of it is, yes, he has the unitary executive theory, which was, this crank right-wing theory, and has suddenly become all of our lives. But he's also, just neutered the Republicans who, control Congress by, two votes and, are afraid to say boo against him. And, every time it goes up to the Supreme Court, it seems like he wins again. So it's like the whole Federalist paper theory of U.S. government is kind of going by the by. All right, I'll let you guys get out of here, but I do want to say, Christina, you've been doing a great job on this 5050 Los Olivos story, and Nick, you got to find a way to keep her.
Yes, we're working on it.
I read online that Christina's thinking about getting a PhD in linguistics, and I'm sure that's higher paying than what they're giving you at the Independent.
Well,
But
you know who hires people who have PhDs in linguistics is the CIA. They're very big in that.
well, her the draft title of her dissertation is deciphering ancient cultural references and obscure sentence structures in the columns of Nick Welsh. I
There's enough content
Yeah,
for 6 years of study.
yeah.
You might as
But
well
one
just
day I have already been able to do that. Come on.
I know.
All right, you guys. Hey, thank you so much, and thank you all for watching. And we'll see you next time on Newsmakers.
And man, you have a
Thank
good
you.
one.